To order. It's 6:04, and all members of committee here, Keith Capolini, Lindsay Scott, Mary Westfall, and Doug Hayden, the chair. We also have President Ron McCann, Mark Fry, and Patrick Richardson's going to be the mayor's here, Wanda is here, Bill Sanford's here, and a number of members from the public here. And we have two issues on tonight's agenda. We have a bicycle parking ordinance, an amendment to our zoning code that we've been talking about for a while. Which went to the planning commission and has come back with some modifications regarding the, not so much the substance, but the timing of implementation for that requirement. We want to talk about that. I think the people that we have here tonight are here primarily for the cell tower issue. So I thought I would start there. And since our last, I guess the last one, we talked about this in council, had a public hearing on this. Since our last council meeting, we've received some additional communications from legal counsel for Tarpon Towers to LLC, and as well as additional communications from members of the public opposing the tower. And I guess what I want to do tonight is continue to consider the tower issue and see what our next steps forward might be. Leslie, I know we talked earlier today, there are some folks who wanted to address council.
Yes. Lindsay Samuelson, I believe she's on. She was the one that specifically made the request.
Okay. And does, I see Keith Webb is on. Keith, I assume you're here for the bicycle issue, is that correct?
It has been what he's spoken to in the past.
Your mute is right there. You go.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yes, I'm here for the bike parking. Yes, thanks.
You're kind of you're in the minority here, so if that's okay, I'm going to make you wait.
Hey, that's okay. No worries. Thank you.
I apologize. I appreciate
No worries.
Appreciate you're here. I promise you we will get to you on this.
Thank you.
I know we have some representatives from Tarpon Towers here. Are you planning on sharing any additional information with us tonight? Or? And again, identify yourself.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Hingham. Gene Abercrombie, Eastman and Smith, 1 Seagate 24th Floor, Toledo, counsel for the applicant, Tarpon Towers 2 LLC. We submitted, since the full council hearing, a letter from the RF engineer, Aaron McNutt. Aaron, fortunately, is a resident of Perrysburg, and Aaron is here with us this evening. I know there were a number of questions that arose last time with respect to the technical aspects of the letter. So what we had asked him to do was to write it in layman's terms that we could all understand.
Yep.
And when I learned that he was located locally, I said, please be here and answer any further questions. So Aaron is here to answer any questions that the committee may have. And aside from that, we're just here to answer whatever other concerns or questions may arise from the committee members.
Okay, well, maybe we could, maybe the place to start is with Aaron.
That makes sense.
I would really, because I'd like to hear what he can share.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Aaron McNutt.
I've got me in this meeting.
Did you?
Aaron, I guess I asked the question originally. Can you, it's really as simple as, can you explain to us what the impact of this tower will be on the Sylvania community and its and cell phone service in the immediate vicinity of the tower and elsewhere?
Sure. As I kind of highlighted in that letter, Sylvania is covered by 5 macro sites, towers, and 1 small cell. And for that discussion, I left the small cell out just because the coverage area is so small and the number of carriers you can deploy on a solution like that are relatively small. So I just left it with 5 macro sites.
Okay.
And using tools that we have to improve performance, we're able to somewhat locate where most of the traffic is coming or going. And the 2 hotspots in this area are at the high school and at Lawrence University and the surrounding dormitories or housing, whatever they have there. Followed by traffic, of course, downtown. And then lastly, traffic on the south side of the golf course, going down south of McCord or south of Brent Road between McCord and King.
South, say that again, south?
South of the golf course,
Yeah,
about where King Road would go if it were extended.
okay,
That the houses on the south side of the golf course, both on the north side of Brent Road and the south side of Brent Road, between McCord and King. Does
okay,
that make sense?
yep.
Those were the 4 targeted areas. So,
I think that includes my house,
okay,
which
there's a lot of people.
we have a,
It's not that. I
well, we don't have very good cell phone service in our kitchen.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there's, like I said, the 5 sites that we have right now kind of surround that area. So the best solution, without knowing where the traffic is to go right in the middle. By putting your tower right in the middle of that, you're taking a large section of neighborhoods, businesses, and whatnot off of these other towers and putting it on the new tower. So that's your first level. The second level would be analyzing the traffic and some of the performance metrics that we can kind of pinpoint, and that's where we got the traffic usage at the high school and at the college. So looking at the maps and, businesses and that sort of thing, the bullseye is perfectly placed between the high school and the college. As I understand it, there was no option at the college. The high school was the best choice. And I guess after some discussions with people at the high school, I think they selected a location along the outfield fence on the west side of the school, I believe. And basically what that does is that puts all the mobile devices that are at the high school, at the college, in those neighborhoods going along Brent Road, pretty much north up to Sylvania, Metamora, and almost over here to Main Street. It puts them on the new tower. So they have their own backhaul or fiber. They've got their own set of frequencies that they're no longer sharing with other people that are outside of that immediate area. Does that make sense?
So there are 5 existing towers, and this would be a 6th.
Macro site, yes.
Okay. And the primary benefit and the benefit of this 6th tower would make the other 5 towers more efficient because they'd be handling less traffic.
That's right.
Am I getting that right?
That's right. Yeah, 2 immediate benefits. Number one, if you're over like Bicentennial Road, you're no longer sharing that site with somebody at the high school, waiting for your time slot to get your data. Those people are on a completely different network from the new tower. So I guess in simple terms, we've got the city surrounded. This would be the bullseye.
So were there other sites considered, and the Edison site downtown next to Speedway, next to Sodders?
The library facility?
It's behind, it'd be east of the library. It's just south of you, across Main Street.
I'll pull it up on the map here.
I asked this question in the last meeting, and I was looking forward to hearing from you. Behind the fire station. And next to the grocery store, sorry, on Main and.
Right.
So, Main and Monroe? Yes, so this location would have been outside the initial circle that is identified on the map. Basically, that's at the eastern edge of where we would need to offload. So if I put a site there, downtown becomes great. The high school goes to good, the college goes to good. Those housing developments on the west side, so like along Brent Road, they don't get anything.
Now, how about the golf course?
They don't get anything either.
No, I mean, how about the location, having it on?
The golf course has the opposite problem. It has the same problem on the opposite side. So it's on the west edge of where we need to offload. So it would help those people on the west side, but it would do nothing for downtown, the high school, or the college. It's
It's line of sight to the high school. I mean, if you were on top of the tower, you could look down on the high school.
I understand that. What you're doing is when you're looking at these towers on a map, you know, each tower has a coverage radius. Okay. Right now, those all have to touch in order, you know, carry service through the community. When you drop a new one in there, easy way to look at it is halfway between those 2 towers is where the line is. So if you drop it too far to the west, on the west edge, or the east, the north, or the south, or anywhere along that outer part of the circle, you're helping only part of the problem. You're always going to be left with the other side that didn't get anything.
How long ago was this site identified? I'm not talking specific to trying to get it off the lease, but on when you're looking at signal, how long ago was it targeted?
I mean, I want to say this initially started probably 2005.
It's been 10 years.
10 years, 2010.
I was on a performance side back then,
Oh.
so I didn't do the initial circle on a map, but I didn't do anything up until I got back into it a couple of years ago. So yeah, it's been a long time. The main reason that hasn't moved from then, quite honestly, is the high school. The usage with, kids is through the roof, and then it's high school and college. So basically, to sum up, if we went with one of those locations, realistically, we would probably be back here in a couple of years, and I would be looking to build another site. If we build it on the east side, I'd be looking to build something on the west side in another couple of years. So by putting it in the middle, that's where we can efficiently fix the problem the best, and anything outside of that, we lose efficiency. You lose too much efficiency, and like I said, you're delaying. You didn't fix the problem.
Understood.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there a way to quantify? I mean, and we're going to, is cell phone service in Sylvania community going to be 10% better, 20% better, or is that? Can you give us some feel on that?
Yes, and I tried to do that in the letter. Right off the top, you're just doing simple math, and that is by dropping another tower in instead of having 5 to cover the area, you've got 6, so you're gaining 20% right off the top. That's not doing any complicated math, that's just 20%. However, when you're looking at the driver here is data, and when you're focused on the high school and the college, anytime they're making some sort of request, whether they're going to YouTube and they're waiting for their data, they're in queue with somebody else on the outside of that ring of 5 sites. So it's tough to analyze it before it happens, but in looking at some of the past deployments we had that are similar to this, we're seeing something like 8 times improvement in capacity. And that's mainly because you're taking your largest traffic area and putting it very close to the site, which means their signal quality is fantastic. And they're getting really fast data rates, really, really fast. So when you're getting really, really fast data rates, you're getting your bits, and then they can serve the next person. If the quality is not good, you're getting a slower data rate, which takes it longer for you to get your video, and then you have to wait for your email to come in. So I'd be curious to see myself after it goes live what kind of improvement we see, but I'm thinking 8 times is going to be, it's probably going to be a minimum. I think the traffic is going to go up a lot. As you said, I know a lot of those houses down there along Grant Road, they don't have service unless they go near a window. Yep. So if they're not on their Wi-Fi, they're not using the device the way other people do when they have great service in the house. It's just a cumulative effect. So we drop this in, and like I said, it goes from not so good to really good.
So if the current if the current quality were on a scale of 1 to 100, if the current quality was 10, you're thinking it's going to be 80?
It would depend specifically about where you're asking, but on the center of where this is in the high school, I would say, yeah. I would say that there is 0 chance you could live stream video through the high school right now. You might be able to when you get over by a window. I haven't been in there for myself, but I don't see that happening. Once this goes in, they're not going to be waiting on any particular queue. I don't know if that explains it or.
Quick question for you, and it's maybe something you already explained and I just didn't capture it.
That's okay.
When this goes in, you talk about how much better the service would be in the area you described.
Okay.
But along that pattern, you're taking some of the stressors off some of the other hotspot areas.
That's right.
So does that mean that those other outlying areas will improve because
That's
there
right.
are less pull on them?
That's right.
So the whole city essentially should see a little bit of a lift.
Yes. Yes. That larger area that I defined in the letter, which I defined as US 23 on the east. I would say the state line on the west side, Centennial, and on the south side, it would be a little bit south of Brent Road, but not all the way down to Sylvania. So we have another site that's down there. So once you get more than one hop away, it doesn't change anything down there. But yeah, certainly. So if you're over Bicentennial Road, you're literally sharing speed with somebody at the golf course and somebody at the high school. So when you get those off, the surrounding communities get faster. Now the coverage doesn't improve in those surrounding areas. That's just the capacity, the speed side of it. But on the inside of that smaller area, you get both. Much, much, much better coverage and much faster.
And essentially, we already have this same technology throughout the city, except for in this gap that we're discussing. So these same types of towers and signals,
Exactly the same.
it's already sort of throughout the community. It's just in this area that it's missing.
Yes, and as identified in the original engineering document that we use, our channels are on, of course, different frequencies, and it's not like radio and it's not like TV where they're right next to each other. There's huge gaps in there. So I guess the easiest way to say that is we have a small group of low frequency channels that are great for coverage. And then we have a small set of higher frequency channels that are more used for capacity. And that's because the higher frequency doesn't carry as far. And when it doesn't carry as far, you literally have gaps. And in those gaps, you can't use, as a user, you wouldn't see those higher frequencies because they just don't get there. So once again, by dropping something in the middle, not only do you gain efficiency because of the backhaul, and you've got a new tower and all these high data users are on the new site, you've also filled in this hole of these high frequency channels that don't touch as it is right now.
But this isn't introducing something new that we don't already have in the city.
No. It's a design strategy heading towards the next generation. Is it specifically for that? No. Our triggers were going off, like I said, coverage-wise years ago, and spectrum-wise usage several years. But the good thing about it is it fits perfectly into a next generation plan. There's no, man, I wish we would have put it here. I wish we would have put it there. It's in the middle. It's in where it should be. Now I can't speak to how that's going to evolve. I can't really predict how 5G is going to be used, but
Thank you.
sure.
Just to be sure I have this right. Putting in this new tower at North will improve the service at Southview because the towers that service Southview will have less load.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I have to, when you say improve service, there are two separate components. One is like the coverage side, what's the usability of it? And the other side is the data side, how fast can I get you what you're asking for so I can serve the next person, right? The closer, it's kind of like using your voice in a room without a microphone. The closer we get together, the softer we both speak. If somebody else entered the room in the corner, they could have their own private conversation without affecting us. But as I move further away from you and closer to that group, both of us have to talk louder. That would be like a power going up. And I might have to speak slower for you to understand the words I'm using. That would be kind of like the data rate that we're trying to get. So if we're right beside each other, we can talk really fast. I step away. I mean, you picture that same analogy where everybody in the room is trying to have their same conversations. So the notion of getting the rings of people in their own conversations closer and closer together. Talk faster data rate. You have a much better understanding of the words I'm using, as opposed to crowded. Everybody's talking at the same time. Well, if that helps or makes it worse.
Still a little,
Is it
I don't have a perfect understanding of this.
Okay.
Can I interject something? As I'm thinking about what you're saying and what you're asking. So, and it's John Armour from Tarpon Towers. When he's talking about capacity versus coverage. So I guess the best way I can explain this is if beside the other school, there's a street right now that doesn't have coverage. This new tower won't cover that street. The coverage is what the coverage is over there. But because the center or the bullseye is not covered now adequately, it's stealing from all 5 of those other sites. So that's a capacity issue. So when that new site goes in, it improves the capacity of all the sites, which improves the speed of the users, their user experience. But again, if there's some terrain issue that's preventing something from getting coverage, or if there's a building issue that's preventing something from getting coverage in one of those other locations, that's not going to change because we fixed the center. So that's the difference in my limited knowledge about the coverage versus the capacity. I don't know if that helps.
I understand what you're saying. I guess, so if someone's having cell phone calls drop in their kitchen over by Southview, this won't change that.
It will change that.
It will change.
It will change that.
And how will that? Because you'll have more capacity.
No, that would be the coverage side of this.
So was what I just said incorrect?
It's correct in a language where we're talking about all the usages outside.
Okay,
If we're
but in
talking,
building coverage.
yes, if we're talking about outside, what you said is exactly right.
Okay.
However, most of the traffic is inside, and you're losing signal going through the building. No matter what you build it out of, you're losing signal through there. Okay. So as you said over there on Brent Road, you know that you don't have good service in your house. I don't know exactly where that is. I'm not promising that you will all of a sudden have great service in your house. I'm just saying people in that area will. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Okay. I haven't had this problem. The more I talk, the more confused I make people. Is that what's happening here? I really did my best with the letter. And,
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I'm not going to. Okay. I think it's a complicated issue as far as fluoride.
It is.
A very capable economics major.
Economics major, okay.
So, Mr. Ham, could I ask a question?
Sure.
Data continues to grow, obviously, correct?
Yes.
How long does this buy us for the area where you're dropping this tower? 2 years, 5 years? I mean, are you going to start looking for the next telephone site, tower site tomorrow, if this is approved tonight?
This would be it for macro sites, meaning an actual tower. This is looking at 130 feet. Because everything in the future is going to be 5G. Everything. Which means we're able to process and send data faster. But the new frequencies we'll be using, for the most part for 5G, are much higher, which means they don't carry as far as even what we have now. So the ideal solution, if we were to look 10 years into the future, I don't see any more macros being requested in the Sylvania area. We would be at that point where each macro site has about a mile coverage radius, which is to say that the 5 sites would all then be spaced about 2 miles apart, roughly. You would be looking to fill in the new gaps with, what are called small cells. And those are the things that they look like, sometimes you put them on traffic signal beams. Sometimes it's telephone lines. It depends on what the area is. But those are all like 30 to 40 feet high. Everything contained on a pole. But that's the future.
How many of those are you going to need to be able to provide 5G? I know that's completely away from the subject, but I may never have this opportunity to ask you this ever again, so I might as well take the shot.
I can't say. There's no way.
Talking hundreds, thousands? I mean, how many sites per square mile, I guess, is any rule of thumb for that at this point?
Well, the initial design guidelines that we went for designing some of the larger cities that have come in have almost been thrown out the window already. And all of this, 4G, 5G, this doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
The technology doesn't matter. It's all about the frequency. There are physical characteristics to the frequency. We have every so-called low frequency that there is available.
Mm-hmm.
This next set of frequencies that have been opened up by the FCC for use for 5G are really, really high. We don't have a good idea how well they propagate yet. And even if we did, instead of me trying to drop in a macro site with a 1 mile radius around it, you're now talking about targeting something that would be maybe 1,500 feet, 2,000 feet. So without knowing where that usage is or will be, there's no way to define that.
Thank you.
That's the best I can give you.
No, that's okay.
I don't think I'm smart enough to ask any more questions. I got, might have some questions for the school board later, but I think I appreciate you being here. Appreciate you trying to explain this to me.
Well, I know it always helps. It always does help. So before you
A couple of things that didn't get covered at the beginning. Aaron, if you can go through your professional qualifications, how long you've been with Verizon, all of that sort of thing.
Okay, yeah. So as they mentioned, I live in Perrysburg. I've lived there for 16 years, I think. I've been with Verizon for 23 years, and I've been doing engineering, whether that was on the performance side or RF design side, for about 21, it'll be over 21 years now.
Okay.
Thank you. And if it helps.
Yeah.
I went through the same thing with our site at downtown Perrysburg.
Okay.
And I think everybody's pretty happy with what they got. Police didn't used to be able to use their phones for the 4th of July on the south side of the river there. You know, that's a huge event for Maumee and Perrysburg. It was a critical point of emergency communications, especially during that event. So I know you guys have your own hotspot events out here. So I'll just leave it with that.
When did Perrysburg die?
Well, geez, time is running really fast now. So I'm going to say it was 4 years ago. Let's say that's 4 years ago. Ironically enough, it's actually at their police station and city council building.
And one final item, can you speak to the issue of where Verizon sees this site as far as priority?
In my area, which would be Northwest Ohio, this is number one. We have to get this built. It's been on my list now for several years.
So what makes number one the priority? Is it based on the community need, Verizon's focal point? I mean, what makes it number one?
Several layers, customer complaints. We have a third party that uses vans to drive test through an area. So they're looking at not only connections, does the connection stay up, but they also look at throughput. Throughput on data is everything. So we know we drop below that marker, you know, somebody like me has to explain why that is. In the last several years, it hasn't gone past the conversation of we got to get this site built. Third metric would just be in the performance stats that performance engineer would be monitoring. When an event comes up in Sylvania, I mean, there's nothing we can do. We're tapped out. It is what it is.
Is there a critical timeline or deadline on when this needs to be up or when a decision needs to be made?
Well, I can't answer that. I guess that's not my area of expertise. If you were to ask me personally, I would say yesterday. But that's not mine.
Sorry, do you have in your experience, have you noticed a trend of these issues or complaints? I think you guys mentioned this has been on the list for about 10 years or so. Have you noticed that it's stayed about the same? It's been increasing in issues or usage has been increasing? Is there a trend?
It's been increasing, especially if you go back 10 years, because once the iPhone came out, it changed the world in a sense that now you're able to see the internet. You could get on the internet before with those tiny little screens with your flip phone. It wasn't until the iPhone came out with that kind of a user interface that brought the internet to everybody that had a device. Now, it took a couple of years for everybody to kind of catch up and catch on. But when that happened, we stopped looking at street level coverage. What's it like when I drive down the road? Because that doesn't matter anymore. It's people, they're talking to somebody at the hospital and they walk inside their house and the call drops. They have to get some sort of solution because a lot of them don't have a phone at home, or they don't want to have a phone.
I don't have a wired phone anymore.
Yeah, either, but It's all tied into the larger picture of, if you look at the usage for 911 calls, I mean, it is enormously popular for people to call 911 on a mobile phone. So the complaints have gotten elevated in a way that reflects the usage has come indoors. And it's come into a place that we didn't previously have a design for. And that's in another way of what we're trying to catch up with. They just, some take longer than others.
Before you go away, you work for Verizon.
Anyway,
Okay. And what's your relationship with Tarpon Towers?
Want me to explain that?
I'm fine with that.
Dan, John Armour, Tarpon Towers. So the relationship and the way this industry has evolved is that the RF engineers for any given company, AT&T, T-Mobile, Dish Network, Verizon, they identify where the problems are. They work with their team to say, right, we drop calls over here, we have no coverage over here, these customer complaints, all the things he just mentioned. So they work to identify a search area that they need coverage or capacity issues fixed in. Once they identify that spot where they need the coverage, they hire somebody like Mr. Steve Carr. Mr. Steve Carr is a site acquisition specialist. So what he does is he takes that information from the RF department, and then he goes and starts looking at all the surrounding communities that are inside of that search ring, and he begins to talk to the individual landowners. So he's doing the courthouse research, he's figuring out what the possibilities are. He goes and talks to them. Once he finds somebody who's willing, in this case the school district, then we get involved as it begins to go through the final stages. We meaning Tarpon Towers. Okay. So we are a tower company. What we do is build, own, and operate towers. So Verizon and their competitors no longer want to build their own towers. It's a very costly project to take on. And what cell phone companies learned years and years ago was that their expertise is in delivering the network to the customer. It's not in owning the steel and building the tower. So back in about the 90s, that began to separate, where in the beginning, AT&T was building AT&T towers, Verizon was building Verizon towers. As that began to separate, you were seeing the emergence of some of the public tower companies like Crown Castle, American Tower, and SBA. They were buying these portfolios of towers from Verizon, from AT&T, from T-Mobile. As you go on in time, smaller tower companies started to evolve because it's a good business if you can get in and do well with the customers and service their needs. So Tarpon Towers, we're now in Tarpon Towers 2. We've been in existence for 5 years. Tarpon Towers 1 was in existence 5 to 6 years before that. We're a company that's made up of all C-level executives from public tower companies at one point in time. So we came onto the scene, we developed relationships with companies like Verizon in markets around the country. And this relationship is, like I was saying, where they take it to a certain point, then they say, okay, we know we found the location. We got to get this through zoning, get it through permitting, get it built. Let's hand it off to one of our partner tower companies. In this situation, Tarpon Towers is the partner tower company. So the lease is in our name with the school. We will build it. We will pay for it. We will operate it. Verizon will be our number one tenant on that location.
So how many towers does Tarpon Towers 2 operate?
Right now, we have approximately 339 states, and we manage about another 300 with marketing development.
It's own 300
and operate 300, and then manage the lease up of approximately another 300.
And are you privately held?
Yes, privately held. And I think I mentioned this last
LLC or
LLC. Tarpon Towers 2 LLC. I think I mentioned this last time, but if you look at, if you were to go onto our website and look at our history and our management team, There are 6 of us who are partners in this company, and we have combined industry experience of over 125 years. As I mentioned just a moment ago, we've all worked in high capacities at the public tower companies, SBA, Crown Castle, or American Tower. And so over the course of our experience, we've managed hundreds of thousands of towers.
Is the Tarpon Towers 2 group a different group than the Tarpon Towers 1 group?
No. We just recapitalized. We were coming to the end of one of our funds were sunsetting 2 years ago. And so we recapitalized, brought in new money, and went to Tarpon Towers 2.
2 years ago or 5 years ago?
2 years ago.
So
I'm sorry. I understand where you're going. So you're absolutely right. Tarpon Towers 1 has been in existence for approximately 5 years. We recapitalized 2 years ago. Prior to 5 years was Tarpon Towers. So there's been 3 evolutions so far, and it has to do with running out
is
of.
Tarpon Towers 1 still a functioning business?
No, it's become Tarpon Towers 2.
Correct. One of the comments we got was raised questions about the insurability of these towers, and specifically that to the extent that there would be liability associated with the impact of this tower on sensitive communities, that there's no insurance available for that. Can you talk about this?
I'm not really sure what you're asking. You say sensitive community?
Yeah,
What kind of things are
the comment, well, talking about, let me find this. Let me be clear, I'm not asking you about the health effects of these towers, but to the extent that there are claims related to that arise from wireless radiation injuries, such as ADA claims, were the one example that were used. Another was the FHAA claims that there's no insurance coverage available to defend those types of claims if they are related to health claims. Gene, I don't know if
you're getting out of my expertise.
Yeah, I'm not an expert either.
Gene Abercrombie, and I'll confess I'm not an expert in that particular area either. I believe the question, Mr. Haney, that you're asking comes from the email from Mr. Berg.
It does.
That I learned about this morning in talking with Ms. Brenning. She forwarded me a copy of that. So I can't speak precisely to the issues that he raised. Presumably, he is going to seek to address council, and a couple of comments that I would like to make, just for the record, is number one, he's not licensed to practice law in the state of Ohio. I believe he's indicated that he's licensed in New York and New Jersey. And number two, if he is not entitled to represent someone in front of the board, he doesn't have individual standing himself. So I would object to anything that Mr. Berg may state or anything that Mr. Berg has submitted. But that said, to get back to your original question, I don't have an answer, but we can certainly look at it and be in a position to address that when this goes back to full council.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Thank you.
And I don't view Mr. Berg's comment as being anything other than his public views on issues that he's informed of. I don't see them as him representing anyone in particular. But I understand he indicates he submitted these comments at the request of Dr. Lindsay Sanderson, but he does not indicate that he is representing her in that matter.
You are correct in that statement.
And so just as none of these guys are from Sylvania or the area,
Correct.
and they obviously have something to tell us, I think excuse me, go ahead. I think Mr. Berg has something to tell us as well.
I believe the distinguishing fact there is my client has a business relationship with Sylvania City Schools in order to construct the tower. If Mr. Berg is not representing Dr. Samuelson, then he is commenting in his private capacity. And I believe under Ohio law, that he would not have standing to do so because he's not directly affected by the decision of this particular court.
So you're saying
That said, I don't want to belabor the point. I just wanted to make sure that I got the objection on the record as to my concerns.
okay, well, so you're saying only people in the city of Sylvania have standing to comment in front of this council?
Only people that are directly affected by the tower itself, yes.
Okay.
Otherwise, anyone.
I don't know where that comes from. Leslie, we'll look at that.
And I can submit some materials on that as well.
Yeah, you probably should.
Otherwise, theoretically,
Is that something?
somebody from
Because that's a standard.
Spokane, Washington.
Absolutely, and I would welcome the intelligence of someone from Spokane, Washington, or someone from Verizon who is not associated with Tarpon Towers through the applicant here. Just as I welcome his comments and edification.
Nope, I completely understand. Like I said,
I thank Mr. Berg for submitting.
I just don't want to belabor the point. I just wanted to get the objection on the record. So unless the committee has any further questions, that is all my client had prepared to present this evening.
I would like to know more about Tarpon Towers too, of the size of the business, about its ability to stand behind the representations that it's going to make in the special use permit, if we in fact do that.
We can certainly submit some additional information.
I appreciate that. I'd like to take a look at that.
Certainly do. I'm hopeful that Mr. McNutt's testimony this evening was helpful. Like I said, when I found that he was located as close as he was, very, very important that we were getting a lot of questions answered that wouldn't be so easily answered in writing. So unless there are questions that arise out of any of the public comment that may come hereafter, we appreciate your time this evening.
Okay. Where are we?
No, I think. Did you have any other questions for Aaron?
No. Thank you very much for driving all the way up here from Perrysburg.
Yes.
Be careful on your way home.
Had to come all the way across the road.
Was bumper to bumper on the highway.
I've driven on that. I've driven on 75 during the construction. It's no fun. Thank you. Okay. Leslie, we had some people. I know we have some people want comments, but I know Lindsay particularly told you in advance.
Correct.
She wanted to
contact the chair.
So if we could unmute Lindsay, hear from her.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Hi.
Okay, good evening. Good evening. I just wanted to say, I just feel like there's got to be a better place for this cell phone tower. Locating it at Northview is too dangerous, especially if it's not absolutely necessary. Why can't we consider fiber optic technology in these busy data hubs? It's faster, more secure, and also safer to our community. It is an alternative worth considering. The tower belongs in a more appropriate industrial zone, which is why the city has such differentiated zoning. The ADA reasonable accommodation claims are novel, but do have a solid legal basis. I have 2 patients that have come to me with EMF sensitivity, which is chronic and debilitating. A growing number of people are experiencing this phenomenon, and they are not hypochondriacs. I ask that you require Tarpon Towers to hold that insurance that does not have a pollution exclusion if this is a must to be built at the school. I can't think of a more inappropriate area to put the tower unless it was deemed completely and utterly necessary. A high school, a preschool, and all the athletic fields, both the high school and university, could consider the fiber optic cable. Please consider that towers catch fire. They fall down, they drop icicles, as well as look like rogue weeds amongst our beautiful tree lines. A survey by the National Institute of Science, Law, and Public Policy found that 94% of homebuyers are less interested and would pay less for a property located near a cell tower or antenna. Being witnessed clinically to and at the forefront of this emerging silent epidemic, I certainly would not buy a home within 1,500 feet of a cell tower, and I certainly would not send my daughter to school there if I had a choice. I know that many other people feel the same way. So in closing, when making your final decision, please remember that it is your independent and paramount duty to protect the public health and safety of residents and visitors of Sylvania. I ask that you do everything in your power to do that. Thank you.
Lindsay, before you go, could we have your address for the record?
Yes, sorry. It's 5242 Eagle Ridge Lane in Sylvania.
And
sorry, that's my daughter.
I should know this, but you would be located approximately how far from the tower?
Approximately 1,500 feet from the tower.
I know your views, because I mean you are very close to the tower. Do you have? I know you've commented on a couple things about your concern about being located that closely. There are some comments in the record about people not wanting to purchase properties near the tower. Do you have anything to share with us about your view of that?
Yes, well, I pride this area as being RF low in frequency. And so I have measurements from before. And if this tower goes up, I will take measurements after. And if they exceed what most medical scientists that are, studying this phenomenon deem as unhealthy, then I will also be sure to move.
And Dr. Samuelson, what kind of doctor are you?
I'm a naturopathic doctor, 4 years of medical school. We are licensed in 25 states. We're an emerging field of practitioners. When I started school, there were 14 states that licensed us as primary care physicians, and now there's 25. So it's a growing field. And it's all evidence-based medicine. We did full-on medical school, scientific training, evidence-based.
And this is, what do your neighbors think about this? Because we haven't heard from a lot of them.
Well, I did a little bit of a walk down the street, and the neighbors that are closer to the tower, when I spoke to them it was at the 18th, the Sunday of the 18th, and they had no idea this was happening. And they did ask for more information. We have a petition that's been circulating. I'm not one to knock on doors and, I don't want to scare people and make a big deal about it, especially if it does go up. But the neighbors that I've all talked to were shocked, and they were completely didn't feel comfortable with it. So I was hoping that they'd send letters. I told them to send letters and to sign the petition. I think right now we have over 100 people that signed. But again, we didn't aggressively knock on the doors. And I think if we did something like that, we'd get a lot more people involved.
Petitions are nice, but there's an inherent unreliability in petitions. people will sign a petition. And if your neighbors are concerned, we would like to hear from them.
Okay, well, I'll be sure to let them know that. Thank you.
Do you have anything else you want to talk to us about?
Thank you. No, I appreciate the time, and I'm sure there's others that want to speak.
Anybody else have a question for Lindsay? If not, I see Greg Feller's hand is up. Hi, Greg.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry, I'm sitting in my car here at my kid's soccer practice. Appreciate you having me here. I just wanted to touch a little bit on some of the things that were said at the last meeting and just kind of talk a little bit about why the board did this. So obviously, we feel like obviously the board approved this. So we feel like the board kind of, gave their approval with that vote that we took. But really, and this kind of came up at the last meeting, what the lease is, how much money we're getting, that kind of thing. And I just want to point out that, we're not doing this for the money. Obviously, getting some rent is a plus, but really the real reason we did this is because we feel that's a safety issue. I'm not sure if you remember, there was, I think back in December of 2019, there was a bomb threat that was called into Northview. Ended up being a hoax, which was great. But, there was some real serious communication issues between our administration and the officials that were on site during that investigation in that situation. So they were not able to communicate with each other via cell phone. And that's an ongoing problem. So we really looked at this as a safety issue. And we feel like having, improve. I mean, right now the cell service is pretty much non-existent at Northview, which is an issue. I mean, I think as everyone knows, most people communicate with their cell phones nowadays. And, if there ever is a problem or a situation out there, kids can't call out, teachers can't call out. We feel it's a safety issue. So that's really the real reason why the board decided to do this. And I know it's been brought up a couple of times about fiber optic. I just want to point out fiber optic is completely different from cell phone service. The fiber optic is the internet coming into the building. We have that. There's just no cell service out there. So I hope that provides a little bit of context as to why the board decided to do this, and I can answer any questions if anybody has any.
Greg, I know that this has been under consideration for some time, and you've been on the board for 2 years?
This is the start of my second year. Yeah, so a year and 4 months now, 5 months.
So did you hear any of these other concerns? Do you have anything to, some of the concerns we've heard about in some of the comments that have been submitted are risks associated with fire and collapse and risks associated with extreme weather, including ice. Do you have any knowledge about any of that?
Those concerns.
Just to be clear, I don't have any specialized knowledge. I'm just curious whether any of that was weighed by the school.
To my knowledge, nobody brought up concerns about icicles or fires or that kind of thing. There were some comments about, the health issues. I can't speak for the rest of the board members on that. I know for me personally, I did some research on it and I felt comfortable voting for it. But that's just me. That's not me speaking for the board. That's just me. And I lived by a cell tower over there by Kroger at Sylvania and King for 13 years. To me, it wasn't an issue. I understand it might be to some other people. To me, it was fine. I think that's one of the reasons why we asked Tarpon if we could incorporate the cell tower as a light pole for the baseball field. We felt that would help, while it's going to be a little bit taller than the other light poles, it'll have the baseball lights on it. And we felt that would help, integrate it into the site a little bit better than just putting a standard cell tower there.
Did the board engage in any discussion about the health effects issues? You know, I think that's outside our range of consideration by law, but it would have been within yours.
I'll be honest, I don't remember. I don't know that we had discussion. I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I don't remember. I have to go back and look.
Would you do that for me?
I could.
Greg, did you
Yeah.
have a lot of community feedback when you discussed this at the board, at the school board?
I don't remember having a ton of community feedback, no.
So just to summarize, it's your understanding that the board remains fully behind pursuing this tower. Is that correct?
Correct. The board voted to approve the contract, and we're under contract, obviously subject to the zoning approval. But yes, the board is under contract for this.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Got people. Go ahead. Nancy, I've talked to Nancy. It's not fair, is it?
No.
I'm John Zeckman. I live at 5522 Bent Oak Road, Sylvania. I've lived in Sylvania for 50 of my 70 years. I've lived at Bent Oak for the last 30. I was disappointed to learn that the school was partaking in this, entered into the contract actually without consulting people in the community. That surprised me a great deal. We spent a lot of time working on school issues, was head of school, headed up a couple of levy campaigns. So I was disappointed to learn they did that without any community support. A couple of things that Mr. Feller said. I was at the meeting the other night, so I expressed my concerns there. He also said that the towers were close to the light towers. If I'm not mistaken, the light towers are 70 feet, and this is going to be 130 feet. I learned a couple of things tonight. I learned that it's going to affect Lords and Sylvania High School or Northview High School more than anything else, diminishing returns in other parts of the city. Lords didn't think it was important enough for them to approve a site on their property. I did not know that the communications issue was as big an issue as it was at Northview. I'm wondering if there are other solutions to that issue. I'm also wondering if there are compromises to be had here. If in fact, the Sodders, what we were talking about earlier, that Sodders property could have been looked at further. And again, maybe not the same returns that we were going to get here at Northview, but possibly good enough returns. Not all of you know me. I know many of you, but Becky and I believe that we're at a time in this country where too often people think that their individual needs come ahead of community needs. And quite frankly, Becky and I don't believe that way. You don't know us, but we're not going to, if this goes through, we're not going to go sue somebody. We're not going to put our house up for sale. We believe in this community and what's best for the community. Having said all that, we were told 2 weeks ago by one of the representatives that after 2 weeks, we probably wouldn't notice the tower. I question how many people in this room, how many people that represent those interests, if they are within 100 yards of the tower and sitting in their patio or in their pool, if they're going to say, gee, I don't notice that after 2 weeks. And how many on this board, how many would vote yes if this was going to be within 100 yards of your house? That's all I've got to say. Thank you for your time.
Okay. let's, can we hear from Mr. Berg?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
I can. First of all, let me thank you for your email. It was informative, raised a lot of issues. I don't really think we need to go over everything in your email. It's a pretty diligent council. We read stuff by and large, but I'd be interested in whatever you have to add.
Great. My name is Robert Berg. I'm a New York attorney. I represent individuals and organizations before land use and municipal boards regarding the deployment of cell towers and other wireless facilities. I file lawsuits when necessary to ensure that such facilities are sited where they don't endanger public health and safety or destroy the aesthetics or property values of the neighborhood. About 2 months ago, I met one of Northview High's finest graduates, Dr. Lindsay Samuelson, during the hearings on this application, and I really admire her efforts and those of others in the community coming to you guys to try to prevent this tower from being built on a totally inappropriate site. I don't deny that Verizon and Tarpon Towers may have a need for another macro tower in Sylvania, but really this site on the Northview High School campus is so abominably bad that I actually prepared this rather exhaustive legal and factual analysis for the city council members. I want to highlight a few points tonight. You have an independent duty, regardless of the school board and administration entering into this contract with Tarpon Towers, to ensure that the public health and safety and the neighborhood character and aesthetics and property values are preserved. Tonight, you'll learn that the main purpose of this tower seems to be that kids at the high school and at Lourdes University can stream videos. That kind of shocked me. I mean, there's really no tremendous need other than that from what we heard tonight for this tower. The public safety issue that the school board member mentioned can be solved, I think, much more easily if you just put a small cell facility somewhere in an isolated portion of the property. Then they'll have plenty of cell coverage to make emergency cell calls on the high school campus without having this tower. What really concerns me with this tower, besides the health effects that you don't even have to consider, is the public safety effects. In my letter, I cited a whole bunch of cases where fires have occurred recently in Otay, California. There was that fire at the high school in the tower early one evening in March, and the tower collapsed onto the football field stadium seats. These towers they do catch fire. There are electrical issues with these towers. Oftentimes when maintenance is being done and welding is done on the towers, they catch fire and burn. You're in the middle of a densely populated high school campus, and to have this tower sited right by the parking lot, right by cars, to me is just crazy. You have ice storms in Sylvania in the winter. These towers, you can have pieces of ice falling from 140 feet high. At 150 feet high, an object falling hits the ground at 60 miles an hour. You can have these spears falling down and hitting people in the parking lot or kids walking down by the field. If the tower fell in a tornado, it's going to cause tremendous damage and really threaten the lives of these kids. So the placement is really what's very frightening to me, besides the health impacts. And I think you have easily within your power, the power to require the site to be, to pick a different site. You can deny it on aesthetic grounds. The surrounding neighborhoods are going to see this monstrous tower soaring over their neighborhoods at 140 feet. It's way above anything else around. The application itself doesn't show a photo simulation from the surrounding neighborhoods, the streets around the neighborhood. They're supposed to do that, by the way. Instead, the only simulation you see is right by the baseball field where you have the lights already. They're trying to minimize the visual impact by showing it surrounded by already 70-foot tall lights. But where's the photo simulation in the neighborhood? Normally, what you do is do a balloon test, and then you drive around, you take pictures from various spots in the surrounding areas, and you see what it looks like at the height of the tower with the balloons. I didn't see any of that. Also, the Verizon was telling us last time how critical this was, but then you heard one of the representatives say, you know, we've been discussing this with the school board for years. It really boiled down to money. It boiled down to, they wanted $2,000 a month rent, and we couldn't afford that. The economics didn't work out for us. And then when we got it to $1,600 a month and they agreed to that, we cut the deal. So was it really that critical that they needed this tower in this location, or was it a matter of money for Tarpon Towers? I think that really proves the point that the need for this tower at this site is not critical to Verizon and to Tarpon Towers. There are other sites they should be looking into. And from my perspective, this is the worst site you could pick in Sylvania. You have a robust zoning code in your city. You're very smart, and you think well about the future. You have an industrial zone. That's where these types of things belong. They don't belong in the middle of a residential neighborhood, in the middle of a high school campus. So that's all I have to add tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Bargan. I appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Can we get Aaron? Aaron's been waiting. Step five.
I think, am I unmuted now?
You're there now. We can hear you.
Okay. I'll apologize in advance. I have 3 young kids with me, so the chances of them being quiet through me talking may not happen. But I just want to echo the sentiments of a lot of people that have spoken out. Dr. Samuelson, I think I'm not going to repeat anything they've said. I've already expressed concerns in previous meetings and writing to the board and council already. And
Aaron,
I think,
give us your address.
Oh, I'm sorry, 4144 Lancelot Road. We also own property on Main Street in Sylvania, 5661 Main Street. I think something, if I step back and really look at what's being said in this meeting, the people that are speaking for this tower obviously have a financial gain in this position. I think it feels like from a citizen standpoint, things have been done a little bit backwards. I myself didn't know about the tower until it was at a city council meeting already. So it just feels like the people that are concerned about this may not even know it's happening. I know a lot of our neighbors and colleagues that we know didn't know until this was already put into the zoning committee. So I think that shows the school board's been working on it for a while, and then now it's trying to be passed through zoning. I just feel like there's an overarching amount of citizens that are concerned about this for several different reasons, which have all been addressed. I think just if council steps back and really looks at this from the perspective of your citizens are telling you that we don't want this. And I'm sure obviously, if we're concerned about safety of the towers themselves, I'm concerned about the safety of students at Northview and all of the surrounding schools. But I have a hard time relying on cell phone service that could be obsolete in who knows how many years. And that's our answer. Cell phone service is our solution to a bomb threat or something like that at Northview. I just have a hard time with that because I remember I graduated from Northview in 2000 and we had a bomb threat and there were not cell phones in everybody's hands then, and we were evacuated and things were taken care of. So I just have a hard time with that being the main reason for this being erected on school property. So again, I just think if we take a step back and even just look at how this has been presented, I feel like Tarpon Towers themselves have contradicted themselves a little bit, saying that moving it just as far north as the library or the water tower is not going to take care of the issue. Yet they're almost guaranteeing this is going to provide reliable coverage where it's at. So I just have a hard time stepping back and thinking this is okay. So, thank you for your time. I know this isn't an easy decision for anyone, but we thank you for hearing us out.
Sharon, appreciate hearing from you. Just one thing that I want to point out here, as we sit here as city council, we're hearing from Greg Feller at the school board that that the school has a serious safety concern with cell phone coverage at the school. And I know what we've heard from, and to the extent he represents 52,000 residents in the city of Sylvania, he has some standing there. And I'm not dismissing your comments and your opinion at all. But comparison to the school board saying a really serious need. So we're in a tough spot there. I hope you can appreciate that.
I do appreciate that. And I guess I don't want to diminish the need for safety for these students either. I just feel like relying on cell phone service may not be our best answer if that is truly the concern.
Okay, I thank you. I think that's everybody who wanted to talk about this. Oh, Nancy Larson, I apologize. Would you please? I didn't mean to forget you. I didn't forget. I ignored you. That's even worse.
Nancy Larson, 4015 Newcastle in Sylvania. Thanks for a few minutes. The school safety issue, I think, can be solved also in other ways. 3 different possibilities that was brought up about a small cell signal booster. Landlines in people's classrooms, they do still work. And I was at the school board meeting where they were talking about the technology upgrade that's happening this year. And they were saying that each of the teachers' computers would be able to make calls out. So every single teacher would have a computer that they would be able to use to make cell phone calls and function as an intercom system. So I think that would go a long way to addressing the issue of safety for them. I wanted to talk a little bit about the property value thing because I did try to get the realtor that sold me my condo in Sylvania. I called her and asked her, what do you know about cell phones degrading property values? And she did a little research and she couldn't come up with anything for Sylvania specifically. So I looked, National Association of Realtors does have several articles that they have been referencing. It is a newer thing to try to quantify how much cell phone towers and diminishes property values, but I found several references. Research does indicate that over 90% of home buyers and renters are less interested in properties near cell towers. That's a pretty huge percentage. I know I would not rent and I would not buy a house by a tower or power lines, and that they would pay less for a property in close vicinity to sell antennas. Documentation of a price drop is, I found, anywhere from like 3% up to 20%. When you're talking about a vacant lot next to cell phone towers, 50% less if it is a vacant spot. There was a quote in Land Economics from February of 2016. In 32 years of experience as a real estate appraiser, I have found that aesthetics, or rather the adverse impact of aesthetics, of externalities routinely has the largest impact on property values. As a result, proximity to towers of all types, cell, wind turbine, and electric transmission has an impact on property values. The same is true of all sorts of surface things like pump stations, communication equipment boxes. From a Realtors magazine, cell phone towers bring extra tax revenue and better reception to a section of the city, but many are skeptical because of potential health risks and the impact on property values. Increasing numbers of people don't want to live near cell towers. In some areas with new towers, property values have decreased by up to 20%. There's that 20% figure again. I think that's a real consideration for this zoning special use. The people that live in the vicinity, when they go to sell, if they have 50 or 60% fewer people that are willing to even look at their house, that is a significant drop of possible clientele and buyers that would be interested, let alone the actual money that would be taken off of the sale price for that. So I would ask you to consider that in this decision, as well as the fact that the safety concerns for the school, which I made light of them in my last thing too, and it is a serious concern. I would want the teachers there to be able to have instant, but I think they can have that in those other ways that I mentioned. Thank you.
Nancy, is there any possibility that we could, that your realtor contact will be able to get us? I mean, this is so general, it's really difficult.
I know, I asked her specific for Sylvania and she couldn't come up with anything, just, you know, at a moment's notice. I'd be willing to talk to some other people in the business and see if they have anything more for, you know, Toledo or Northwest Ohio.
I'd be very interested in some hard data on that.
Yeah.
Like to just,
I can address that.
I'm sorry?
I can address that.
Okay. I would be very interested in some hard data from the real estate profession.
Mr. Hayden,
Yeah, go ahead.
did you have something, Kate? Because you're actually on the video, otherwise.
I did. I just was, you know, I've thought a lot about this, and I actually live like right near the water tower with all those antennas on top.
Mm-hmm.
And I never really thought about it before, but I can see them from my kitchen window. I can see them on my patio. And we've lived there for 20 years. And I literally never thought about it until this conversation. And then I was looking out my kitchen window. I'm like, oh, there's the cell towers up there. And I can tell you that the houses in my neighborhood right now are selling in less than a week. So
it is a buyer's market.
It is a buyer's market.
Right now because of the pandemic, I think, and the pent up, and my realtor did say that she thought like people are buying like crazy because of the emotion of.
But then even taking it a little further, so we've lived there for 20 years and my kids grew up there, and if there was like one family that was going to be affected by the waves, it probably would have been mine. I mean, because if we weren't at home, we were in the park, literally under those towers or at the pool. And I mean, this is not scientific at all. I mean, you don't know how you're going to be affected until it's all over. But I mean, 20 years later, so far, so good. And I mean, I still know all the, like the neighbors in my neighbor Maplewood family, like all the people that live there. Which I'm still in contact with those people. I haven't heard of anybody having or being affected, which again, not scientific, but I'm just saying those towers are right in my backyard.
But I don't, my research leads me to believe that they're not. And it is cumulative. It's cumulative.
So who knows? Tomorrow could be my last day.
I hope not. Okay. Thank you.
Is there anybody we haven't? Raise their hand.
You can ask them if they want to raise their hand, if they want to speak.
If there's anyone on the line who we haven't heard from, who wants to be heard, raise your hand. Raise your hand. I guess there's a raise your hand thing on a Zoom.
This is still zoning.
Okay.
I got a question. Do your speakers working here?
Yeah, they work great.
Why is it we can't hear you?
I don't know. Microphone's on. Can you hear me? Okay.
Closer.
All right. Mr. Abercrombie, did you have a closing comment?
I did. Thank you, Mr. Hammond. With respect to the anecdotal evidence, anecdotal information, observations with respect to property value. I spoke with Ken Wood, President of Market Board Appraisal, earlier this week, and he is prepared to, at my client's direction, prepare a report with respect to his predictions on the effect of cell tower value.
That would be very helpful.
If the council would find that to be helpful, we will proceed with doing that. Because otherwise, all that you have in front of you is anecdotal feelings and beliefs. A couple of other quick closing comments. Number one, I appreciate the comments by Mr. Feller on behalf of the school board, and I think we hit a lot of the issues that were unsaid last time. And I would like to just draw everyone's attention to the fact that I'm assuming he was on his cell phone at his kids' practice. So that's showing you the flexibility and mobility brought by further cell service. And lastly, the issue of safety has come up quite a bit, the ability to reach emergency services. That's only half the equation. The other half of the equation is parents to be able to reach their children at school with Twitter and Facebook and everything. News travels quickly. Parents are notified of a bomb threat or a shooting situation, or whatever the case may be, within minutes, and they're panicking, trying to get a hold of their children. And if they can't get a hold of their children quickly, or they can't get a message to or from, that causes quite a bit of concern, not only for the student him or herself, but the parents. So that safety goes two ways. It's not just the ability to notify the police and other first responders. That is all that I have in closing, and we will follow up on the number of items that I noted from when I was here earlier in the meeting, and submit that in time for the next hearing, which I assume, Ms. Spring, will that be 2 weeks from today? Or?
It will be up to the committee to set it up to the committee to make a recommendation as to how we
We're
do from here.
going to have to figure out, because I'm going to have a problem with our next meeting.
Okay.
So we will be in touch.
Great. We appreciate everyone's time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, quickly, I know we're over. I was, Keith Webb, we're going to, you've ruined your night. I apologize for that.
Oh, no, it's been very interesting. Thank you.
I think the issue with I think the remaining issue with the bike parking amendments are the changes for the wording of required to encouraged for these requirements, unless are you here to address that, or are you here to address other things as well?
Well, as you know, I provided input, for this ordinance for consideration by council and by the planning commission or committee. I believe it was Councilwoman Capolini who deferred this back to the board. So I think it was her recommendation to change that wording. Is that correct?
I think we discussed, we wanted to hear more about that. I don't know that, we don't have a motion per se to change that, but did you want to address that?
So,
go ahead, Katie.
So I feel like we could wrap this up in probably about 10 minutes. It's not really that complicated.
Right.
So when we started with, Keith provided all of the great structure and Leslie provided the basis. I think we've got all of the details really, really well formed. My only concern was that if we put encouraged in the legislation, that's pretty much the same as if you don't feel like it, don't do it. But the township recently passed very similar legislation. And in their legislation, correct me if I'm wrong, Keith probably knows this, that when somebody applies for a building permit, if they're going to make a change in their business or anything that they have to come to the zoning department for, that would trigger okay, you're going to remodel, now you have to add the bike rack. Because I am cognizant that we don't want to put an unnecessary load of work onto our single zoning administrator to, after 2 years, go around and tell everybody they have to put in a bike rack. But if every time somebody comes to the zoning office or to get a building permit or anything, that's the point where it would trigger. You're going to do some work. Now you have to get a bike rack. That's all I was going to add.
May I comment?
Yes.
Yeah. So yes, the township did recently pass their new zoning code. It was a total rewrite. I would say that I'm not exactly sure that this wording change is required to accomplish what was just said. So if you change the code that requires bike parking, because currently your code has none, anyone who would need to do a remodel or reconstruction or change their parking lot, anything that would bring them before the committee, the code would then apply. And that's the same with the city of Toledo, for example. Whenever you go back for some kind of change of site plan, that's when that new code kicks in. But that particular sentence, I believe, basically gives businesses 2 years to comply. And that's a little different because that's retroactive. And while I would say that's very progressive, that would, let's say, be great. I'm not sure how you enforce going back or saying within 2 years, businesses have to comply. And, and kind of a compromise might be, just having the wording that, should there be demonstrated need, that code could be applied. But again, I'm not sure how you enforce that.
Well, we did pass the sign code a few years ago that phased out pole signs over 20 years. And we're getting close to that. Mr. Mayor, do you have any thoughts on this?
Typically, with building code issues, buildings are grandfathered in until they come up in and ask for a substantial change or updating to the building. This seems appropriate. To say that everybody has to comply within 2 years is pretty unusual to go and shape the trees that way. You could choose to do that just in the downtown area or the V4 areas or something like that. But I think putting it in the code and requiring that to be part of the approval process when changes are made is appropriate. Toledo has a very extensive landscaping requirement, greenway, trees, and on-site screening. Those are not being done going out and knocking on doors. But as new buildings are built or buildings are updated, they must comply with the code. And I think that is a more rational way to do this, unless you're particularly interested in this specific zone of the city.
Yeah. Are you comfortable with that approach, Katie?
I am, just because, like I said, we have one zoning administrator, and for him to, after 2 years, go around and knock on every business's door and tell them they have to get a bike rack seems like a lot.
Okay. Well, Leslie, can we draft that?
You sure can.
Okay. So, we move that we ask the administration to prepare specific legislation related to proposed ordinance 12-2021 to require those changes when there are planning changes sought.
Does that cover it, just planning changes? Like even if they came in for a sign, that would trigger something. Like anytime the business wants something and they come into the office, that triggers that, oh, by the way, do you have a bike rack?
I can incorporate that into the legislation.
Okay.
Let's put that in the legislation.
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, got that. Now, with regard to, thank you, Keith.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
And now I really do wish I'd gone to you first. All right, with regard to the cell tower SUP, we've had a number of things promised to us that I would like to see before we move forward. I guess for the time being, I would like to just leave this in the zoning committee, annexation and zoning committee, since I don't think we're ready to refer it to council quite yet. And I don't think that requires a motion or any action. So with that, I would entertain a motion to conclude our annexation and zoning committee.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes and we stand adjourned.